All right, we're on 7, opening the meeting of the Winthrop Planning Board at 7:04. Nice to see everyone. So we have some pretty exciting stuff to talk about today. I've prepared a small presentation about the middle school to help organize the conversation, maybe answer some questions about how that would how this might move forward and how we might address the matters in front of us. So we have 2 items on the agenda as well as public comment. We have a continuation of the conversation we've talked about the uses and organizing the use table, making sure that's up to date and current. I'd like to, that's first, but I'd like to take that out of order and do that after, because I think more people are interested in the middle school conversation and the zoning that was brought forth, which is the other item. So the town council has referred to us a recommendation from their subcommittees on economic development and sort of rules and ordinance. They had a joint committee that made recommendations on zoning for the parcels, as well as some recommendations for zoning changes themselves. And I think, again, that's all public record. That's all happened, and it happened in the last, at the joint meeting, noted and discussed at the council, and is now before us. Denise, can you remind me, there was nothing written formally on the paper that I saw, but is there a time frame? Is it 90 days to have a response? Just wanted to clarify that.
Within 65 days.
65.
And during that time, once you guys get ready and we kind of know where we're going, we can have a joint public meeting with the town council.
Okay. Yeah, so that could be on the tail end of it and still fulfill our obligation. Okay, so I think timeline and then sort of, kind of what we need to do is something that I want to discuss with the board here tonight, because it's, again, it's an important topic and we want to make sure we're making an educated decision about that. So I think what I'd like to do, I see 55 participants, so it must be my new haircut. But I'm guessing it's the middle school site why there's a lot of people that are interested tonight. Mm-hmm. So if it pleases the board, I'd like to just actually start with public comment and hear what it is, why everyone's here and what they want to hear. Start with that. And so open the public meeting on the middle school, I guess, redevelopment or development or zoning changes related to the middle school. And then welcome public comment on that. Is that good with the board? And everybody all right with that?
Yeah. Yep. Perfect.
Nodding heads.
Yeah, I'd like to hear from everybody. Not waste their time.
Here's Anna. Okay.
Hey. Perfect. So right. Anna will catch up, but we're going to talk about middle school first, and we're doing public comment. So
okay,
she's got it. All right. So let's do it. Anybody have? So yeah, Denise would tell you, but. Again, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. We like to kind of keep it to, be respectful of others, and state your name and your precinct at the start, just so we can record, kind of who you are and where you're coming from. And if you hear a lot of repeats on a night where we have 55 people, I would, happy to hear your name and just say, what she said or what he said would suffice. If what you're saying is a repeat of somebody else's thing, it doesn't mean what you're saying isn't important. It just means it takes a long time to go through 55 people, and that's just the way we kind of make it move forward. I will also say at the end of the public comment, I just would like to go around the group here, and anyone that had a letter that they've received, I just want to make sure that got to Denise. We don't have to read them tonight. It might be too onerous to do that, but we want to make sure all the comment is received, recorded, and those will be attached to the minutes too, just so since we're probably not going to be able to read them verbatim into the record of the recording. Okay.
Bob, can I make a suggestion?
Please, Gina. Yes.
Can you just reiterate what the topic is that the public comment should be presented on?
Yes.
So that it's clear, for everybody on the phone. Please.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
there are so the big umbrella comments are the rezoning of the middle school site. Okay. But in reality, that is the entirety of the site that is the middle school auditorium, gymnasium, and Larson Rink. That is the matter that's been brought before us. And it's a question of rezoning of, there's actually two parcels, but it's the rezoning of those parcels either together or as a whole or separately. And so that's parcel 1 is the auditorium, gym, rink, and parcel 2 is the middle school site, just to give you a sense of the scale of those things. The other 3 items are zoning changes that are specific to, or adjustments that are not only specific to those sites and would have an effect on those 2 sites, but have an effect on just zoning in general. And one has to do with eliminating the parking in lieu of, or I'm sorry, parking in lieu of, payment in lieu of parking, which is a one-time fee a developer would pay to eliminate the need to develop a parking spot. And the motion brought before us, or the recommendation brought before us, I should say, is to eliminate that as that loophole or that option entirely from our code. The next one is about building height and limits on building height adjacent to residential A. So Central Business District adjacent to residential A would have a limit of 2.5 stories for 75 feet. And zoning change, the last zoning change is the percentage of mixed use that is a minimum requirement on the first floor of a public facing way. So you can imagine any of the businesses on the in the Center Business District this way. Right now there's I believe it's 100% that is required now, which is basically all front facing, all retail oriented towards the streetscape. And this is a limit or the limit would be brought down to 25% is the requirement of that. So taking 75% of that away and allowing it to be for other things that aren't front-facing retail. Okay, makes sense. But in general, anything related to the middle school site, I'm sure that's what I'm going to hear about. So just again, raise your hand. We'll take them in order. Denise is the game show host, and she will get you on.
Okay. All right. We have Wendy Millar-Page.
Good evening, everyone on the planning board. I have been paying very close attention and participating in a lot of these zoning recommended changes, that specifically were being suggested around the old middle school site, parcel 1, parcel 2. I am just a little concerned because I am someone who's been asked some questions because I have been following along quite a bit. I think that it would be really helpful for a lot of us if we all understood that right now in the process, the zoning is kind of like step 2 in an 8-step process before we get to the end result, which is what would be built there. So if we could have a clear understanding of right now, we're in the zoning, which is changing it from being residential sites to potentially being part of the Center Business District and leaving another one residential or whatever direction you go in. The time that we're going to be worrying about whether or not the rink is something that stays in that parcel 1 would come when we start doing RFPs for property. And that's kind of way down the line right now. Rezoning is going to give us the opportunity to get people to invest in the properties that would come in and see potential to actually buy the property and be able to reap the reward of spending, demolishing, and building. So I just would hope that if there's a way that you all could get that out there, so some of the fire and brimstone around the rink right now can settle down, and we can go through the process a little bit more transparently and help people build back up trust in these processes. And one other note, I would love to see the in lieu of parking. I did it too, Bob. the in lieu of, the cash for parking, the in lieu of, I'd like to see that gone.
You can call
Um,
it pile up.
Yes, I'd like to see that to disappear. And then additionally, I am in support for some of those additional zoning changes recommended by the joint committee that came out last week. Thank you for letting me speak, and thank you for the hard work. This isn't easy being a public servant.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
Okay, if anybody'd like to speak, please raise your hand. Come on, here we go. I have one more.
Just one. A lot of,
Really? Okay, let's see. All right, we have Peter Gill.
Unmute, is that better?
Yep, that's better. We can hear you now.
You remember the other day when you took me so long to do that, Denise, and you were coaxing me through?
You're just so quick now.
I just want to thank you guys for getting together and getting this project moving. And I also want to thank you and the joint committee for the consideration and of the neighborhood and what the neighbors' concerns are, the Waldemar Ave neighbors specifically, that the part of the property, parcel 2, one of the reasons that the joint committee recommended that be residential is so that it would be compatible with the neighborhood. And I hope that the planning board continues on with that, keeping that area compatible with the neighborhood, both on Waldemar Ave and on Pauline Street. And hopefully that that whole section that now is occupied by the current middle school building could be residential. And then starting, it would be compatible with the rest of it being non-residential or partially residential from the parking lot of back of the CVS. So it would make a straight line across Pauline Street. But again, I want to thank you, and I want to just stress how important I think it is, not only for the neighborhood, but for the whole community, for that piece to be residential. It'd be really nice if it could be 2-family houses, just like the ones on the right-hand side of Waldemar Ave all the way down. And just another point of clarification, some of the literature shows that Wheelock Street starts at Pauline Street. It doesn't. Waldemar Ave starts at Pauline Street and then turns left and heads toward Pleasant Street. When Waldemar Ave turns left, that's when Palmyra Street starts. So the properties would be facing Waldemar Ave, and the residential would be facing Waldemar Ave and Pauline Street. Again, many thanks for your time and for your efforts, and you have a big task ahead of you.
Okay. We have Lisa Alberghini.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great, thanks. Thanks so much. I want to reiterate Wendy and Peter Gill's thanks. I'm so grateful that this has come before the planning board. Really, really looking forward to this process. I would have just a couple of comments. One is I would really urge the town, the citizens, all of us to give you your time, to give you time to thoughtfully do the work and the job that you're there to do. And with that flexibility, I understand I did attend the joint committee meeting last week. I understand that the joint committee kind of had to put forth a recommendation just to get the process started. It almost mattered less what the recommendation was, but there was an opportunity to vet that fully. What they passed on was Res A for parcel 2 and CBD for parcel 1, and those other questions that Bob Carroll identified. But my understanding of that is just to get the process started, and you can take this in whatever direction you think makes the most sense and is the best path. And I think that you are exactly the body to do that, to study this. This is a really a skilled, talented planning board. We're lucky in Winthrop to have one, have all of you on the board. You know far better how this can, I think, play out. So I would just really urge that we all give you time and support and flexibility to do your job and to get this work done. I would say, for example, I completely agree with Wendy Millara that the question of the rink should come later. Any of the uses, those can come later. I agree with Peter Gill that on the intent and compatibility of that end of the site. But I'm actually not sure that residential A is the best way, frankly, to accomplish the neighbor's objectives. I think there are some other limitations and challenges in that. And so even to accomplish what Peter and others who live across the street have as their goals, I'm not certain that residential A is the best path for that. But you can study it, can learn more, and I think can make some recommendations. So that's all I would say, flexibility and giving you the opportunity to do your job. And I meant to say, it's Lisa Alberghini from Precinct 6. Sorry about not identifying myself at the outset. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we have Shannon Poulos.
Hi, Denise. Shannon Poulos, Precinct 3. So first off, I just want to address, I am probably relatively new to the party in terms of understanding these issues. I do think it's important to remind folks that have been involved for a really long time that it's not that folks like myself haven't been doing anything for the last 10 or 20 years. I think people have different stages of their life. So I just give people some credit for the fact that they're engaged now and not to always constantly try to tell them that they haven't been involved, which happens passive aggressively all the time. So I'll just say that out loud. I think the second thing is I think that the comments around this is stage 2 versus stage 8. I mean, the reality is that the use is the most important thing. And so this is the thing that's going to allow or disallow those said uses. And the reality is that there are a few folks on this board, I know Bob and Julia, and I give you credit for being really involved in a lot of these other visionary plans. Those are aimed at usage. So you are now in a position to then be an advocate and a supporter for zoning that's going to allow those usage. So again, you're not the decision maker on that, but certainly you have an influence in that. So I think to say that, let's not get ahead of ourselves, I think is just really short-sighted and not really seeing the forest through the trees. My final comment is just that what I'd love to see, and I have sent, I'm on the Citizens Advisory Board for the Finance Commission, so I'll continue to press on this, but what if any comprehensive planning has been done at the town budgetary level in terms of the impact, not just from a top line perspective. It's easy to say that, a 100-unit condo is going to bring in $365,000 of additional property tax revenue, which I think that was the quote maybe in like the 2015, 2016 one of the reports. But I think it's really important also to understand what's the impact on our schools, what's the impact on our public safety, what's the impact on our DPW and all those types of things. Because I think until we truly understand the net impact, it would be misleading to just throw out top numbers. And sorry, my last thing I will say is I also think that beyond just the middle school site and what these zoning changes will mean for that, I think it's also really important for someone like me or others that don't understand the way that other properties are mapped within the town, where else this could potentially cause further development. So for instance, if we change the zoning for this type of site and you could put a 4-story, 100-unit condo building there, what other parts of town could that potentially have an impact? Because I think once you make those changes, the train's kind of out of the station and it's really hard to unwind that. So thank you for your time. That's all I had. Thanks.
Okay, we have Stephen Hines.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, hello, everybody. Sorry I'm late. So I was on the subcommittee call and there was really a lot of good discussion there. I've been seeing, of course, Facebook threads go back and forth about the hockey rink. And I just want to, double up on what I said during the subcommittee meeting. If you, and apologize because I missed the first part of this, but if you guys zone the middle school site as Res A or something super restrictive, and then decide to keep the rink, which is what everybody seems to want, you will never have a development on that site. That building is so exorbitantly expensive to tear down that a really restrictive zoning on that portion of the property is unrealistic. if the town decides to keep the rink, which I hope that they do in the long run, you need a lot looser zoning on the first parcel, because you're not going to be able to tear that down and build really restrictive housing on that site in particular. And I doubt you're going to get any commercial on that site to begin with. So stepping back, thinking about the parcels as one group, and even if you zone the hockey rink site to have more residential housing, the chances of us getting more residential housing on that site and keeping the rink are extremely slim. So if we want to keep the rink in the long run, really think about how loose you're going to do the zoning on the first parcel. And that's just after I had conversations after that subcommittee meeting. I got on the phone with some developer friends of mine, and we were talking about the site. And that was sort of their feedback on it when we sat back and talked about all the different options that can be done. I think that you guys really, really, really should engage a really high level commercial real estate broker. I don't know one offhand, but I think figuring out the highest and best use for each parcel is really going to help you with the zoning. You can't zone something that's going to be unrealistic to build. It's going to sit there for another 20 years. And that's been the general consensus in the development community surrounding this site over the past 5 years. And I'm just here to sort of echo that again to you guys. Just be really careful with what you do with that first parcel if you want to keep the rink. And that's my thoughts. Thank you.
You. Denise, anybody else?
Okay, who else do we have? Let's see. If anyone like to speak, please raise your hand. Lisa, did you want to speak again?
Oh, is that because I'm unmuted?
Oh, because your hand's still up.
Oh, sorry. I
Oh, no,
didn't-
no problem.
No, I agree with what Steve just said. I guess I would just, this is the public comment, so there wouldn't be another one at the end after we hear the presentation. Is that right? I'm not suggesting that we should. I just was curious about the process.
What's the will of the board? My thought was just to kind of hear everybody's, hear from everyone and then have a talk as a board to see what we could do this evening and not, I mean, there'll be plenty of other opportunity, but I wasn't thinking about opening it again at the end, but
Yeah,
that's just where I'm headed, but I'm happy to hear otherwise.
Great.
that's fine with me. So I lowered my hand.
Okay, yeah. Danielle Vecchio? You're on, there you go.
Hi, I just want to, I'm Danielle Vecchio from Precinct 5, and I just want to reiterate what Shannon Poulos had stated about thinking about not just, that top tier of what we're looking for what we'd be getting if we had it all residential or a lot of residents moving in. I think that we need to think about the impact on our schools, on our police, fire, DPW, and everything else, and take all that cost away as well. The schools are pretty packed already. They're pretty full. And just having all those, more students coming in, as well as more traffic, I just think that there's a lot to think about when you're talking about zoning for all these residential housing. So I just want to back up what Shannon Poulos had to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Joe Hanlon?
Hey, can you guys hear me okay?
We can.
Awesome. I wrote you guys a letter today or an email today. Hopefully you all got it, so I won't speak for too long, but I just want to say, I think it's important to know that the hockey rink is very important to a lot of people in this town. And I think to Stephen's point, we need to consider that when zoning the whole parcel. And I think it's important that people get involved now, whether it's step 2 or step 8. A lot of the feedback I think that the public hears is that everyone waits till the last minute to get involved and no one speaks up until the last minute. So I think people trying to get involved early is a good thing. And I think everyone that, supports the rink should speak up. I think the other thing we have to consider is this site's really the last big piece of developable land in the town. I think we need to, consider if we're ever going to need it for anything else. So we just want to make sure we get this right because we only have one shot at it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe. Okay, we have Tim, I don't have your last name.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you state your name and your precinct, please?
Sure. It's Tim Teixeira. I'm in precinct 2.
Thank you.
I've been following this a lot, I've been speaking and following what's going on with the school. I do agree with some of the folks of what they were saying about, we only have one shot at this and so forth, and residential and whatever, and zoning and properly, but I have a suggestion as well. If you folks, okay, could be sending this information to the residents, or maybe once a week or once a month, having a general meeting to all the residents who are directly involved with this, say, who are in the neighborhood of Pauline Street, Wheelock Street and so forth, having it maybe twice a month or once a month to give us updates, that would be appreciated.
Well,
Because
we do this, we only get one opportunity to do this, but
because I mean, we want to know, we are involved, we want to know what's going on, because we are directly impacted by what's happening with the middle school, especially the Pauline Street and the Wheelock Street residents as well. And especially Waldemar, like Peter Gill said, we'd like to be kept in the loop, which I understand. And there is a lot of good ideas out there. We do appreciate that. But again, like that gentleman said, we only have one shot at this, all right? And what the young ladies were saying about the schools are already packed as it is. When I suggest, I mean, I understand the school packed and, we want to have more accessibility, we want to have more, what we can do with this property. So, and what that other gentleman said about a commercial real estate broker is a good idea as well. So all I'm saying is just to keep us in the loop, and we, and use all our options to that.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, we have Scott, and I don't have your last name, Scott.
Hi, so it's Cheryl Howard. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm on my husband's laptop. Sorry.
Okay.
So thank you guys. Cheryl Howard from Precinct 2. So just a couple of things. I'm in agreement with Peter Gill about keeping the middle school lot, that plot you have marked as 2, as a residential usage and not bringing any commercial up to that area. I am concerned about including the rink in any rezoning, because I am afraid that any potential developer will want corner to corner and open up discussion about acquiring the rink. So I feel like as a town, we need to make a decision about what we're going to make available for development and do that from the get-go. And I think we should eliminate the rink from any discussion or potential discussion. I also think that we should keep the land to the gym and the auditorium. I understand the buildings have to be demolished, but I think, as someone else has said, we don't have any land left. So I think if a developer can come in and do something residential on 2, and then keep a buffer between the new residential and the rink for now, it can always be sold later. I'm not interested in seeing a giant monstrosity that I see going up in Revere and East Boston. I drive by in awe, and I just don't want to see that in our center. I want to see something. I know they have to go, but I think we should be mindful about who we are and what we have. But I do appreciate your time on this, but I do think we should remove the rink from a rezoning discussion. But I thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, let me see. All right. Elizabeth Jones.
Hi there, Elizabeth Kufal Jones. I'm in District 6. And I just wanted to say, I think that you all are coming together to do a very difficult job. My husband and I have been living here since 2010, and this has been part of the discussion since 2010 at least, about what we're going to do with this site. And I don't envy your position, but I also know some of you on this board, and I know the values that you all on this board have, which is to build community, to generate revenue for our community. And I know that the planning that you will think about and put together will keep those things in mind. And that I think it's important to have community spaces like the rink. I don't think any of you are thinking of getting rid of the rink, but I think you'll have that in mind as you think about the zoning of this. But I think it's just we are so in need of getting this zoning done so that we can bring the revenue into this community that we so desperately need. And just keeping the ideas of community and revenue in mind at both at the same time. I think you all are poised to do that. You're a really good group of people. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Rob DeMarco?
Hey guys, how's it going? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. I also want to thank you guys. This is not an easy task that you guys are undertaking. There's a lot of opinions and a lot of people thinking, and you know, and I thank Bob and Steve and Julia for educating me over the last couple of years on stuff like this. But the one question I wanted to ask, and obviously we're talking about zoning, but there was a motion passed by the town council back in 2018 about not including, it was passed to not include the hockey rink with the, I guess the rule, the actual wording was motion by councilor to remove the Larson rink out of the middle school project. And that passed 5-4. Does that play into zoning in any way, shape, or form? Is that legally binding? I don't know. I'm asking. It might not even be the right question to ask you, Bob, or anybody, but just curious what your thinking is on that, guys.
Yeah, since it's kind of a big question, which would make us all go home early. I do want to respond to that. I think to me, well, first off, the town council just told me to do this, and I'm trying to do my best to do my job to answer the question that the town council today just asked me to answer. Now that motion, as I read it, and thank you for bringing that up, because I was aware of it, but having the real words in front of me are helpful to see. The key word in that phrase, I believe, is project. And as was stated earlier, we're in, I don't know if we're in step 2 of 8, but we're in step something of something. And we are not at the rinks in the project stage. And I think that's a real question that I guess at the end of this, there may or may not be a project at the end of this. We hope there is, right?
Yeah.
And whether that project includes the rink or not is something that the town council is going to have to decide. We're going to make a recommendation, but I don't think we're in violation of that. That's why I don't think you were in violation of sending this to us last Tuesday, is because you're just trying to lay the groundwork for what's to come, and you're not throwing the rink out or doing anything. And quite frankly, I've heard the contrary from almost everyone in the community, from elected officials to peewee hockey players, right? So I don't think any of us on this board are in a hurry or have any goals to remove the rink from the town, and we're not at a point where we're engaging it into the process yet. So I think we're okay there, Rob. Thank you for the question, though.
No, thank you for clarifying that. I mean, that's, you know, I guess this is something that'll play out as it goes on, but I don't envy you guys in the position you are in, and you guys are working so hard. So thank you for your time.
Thanks for bringing it up, Rob. I added to the list of things to be clarified. Quite frankly, that's a good one. It's important.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, Steve Rogers. You're up, Steve.
Steve Rogers, Precinct 1. I just want to reiterate what Cheryl said. I know this is a planning board meeting and the rink decision is down the road. However, this does change the situation with the rezoning. And I just want to emphasize that a lot of people are very invested in the rink. It's a large part of the community. It's very unique in the fact that the town owns it, and almost 100% of its usage is through people in the town, and they use it naturally for figure skating, hockey, and we also use it for fundraising, for scholarships, and it's a portion of this community. It's a very important building to, And I just wanted to speak my piece because I don't want someone saying, where were you when? And I know it's very early in the process. And I spoke the last time 2 years ago when it was voted 5-4 to keep it out of any project. I just hope that people look at that and understand that there is a lot of people that are that the rink is very important to. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, I think.
I see
Cheryl, you all set?
No, I have another question.
Okay. Go ahead, Rick.
So I just wanted to be, I have a picture of the plot plan that you have with the red lines, with parcel 1 and parcel 2. And I appreciate that, but I guess my concern it moving forward is having deeds to all this land and having surveys and having a more definitive map of what it is that we have there and what's going to be what. So I don't know, I'd like a legal description and I'd like to see a survey and I'd like to see just more definitive information. Like I said, I appreciate what you sent out from the last committee meeting, but moving forward, if we could have something more definitive would be helpful. Please. Thank you.
Yep, great comment. Thank you.
Steven, did you want to speak again?
Yeah, just real quick. I just to double up on what I said earlier, as you all heard from these comments, that rink is not going anywhere with a big fight from the town. And if like this town in general wants any of that site to be developed, then you guys need to be really, really careful with what your allowable use is on parcel 1, because it seems to me that any profit that is to be made anywhere on either of those parcels is going to be on the middle school site itself. And that puts everybody between a rock and a hard place, because you're fighting against buffers against a neighborhood. And if you want a buffer in front of Waldemar and Wheelock, then you need to develop on the rink site, but if you want the rink, then you're not going to have that buffer on parcel 1. And so the town really you're not going to get it both ways. You're not going to get 5 2-families and a rink on that site, not with a $3.5 million demo job on that middle school site. It's just not going to happen. So I think as a town, we can come together and figure out what's more important, that buffer zone on Wheelock or that rink, because financially, those two things are not going to happen together. And that is my piece for the evening, I promise.
Thanks again.
Okay. We have JS. Could you state your name, please?
Yeah. Hi, this is Jessica Sabin, Precinct 5. I just wanted to say that I'm in agreement with Steve Rogers' first comments, more than his second comments, but I won't repeat any of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's see, 1 second. Tim, did you want to speak again? Did you want to speak again, Tim?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, one more thing. I heard the gentleman talking about the rink and so forth. He is right about that. We should keep the rink out of whatever it may be, because that rink is a staple of our community. Like he had said, there's fundraisers, there's scholarships, there's hockey, there's everything in there. So we really need to take that out and leave that be. And what that other gentleman saying about buffing, it is right about that. We have to, really consider about that, because again, as he was talking about the buffing of Wheelock Street, the buffing of the rink and so forth, we have to look at this really, really carefully. And like the other gentleman said, we only have one shot of this, and we really, really, really have to do it right. And I know you guys are working very hard, and we appreciate that. So if we could, as we're going forward, take a look at that and really be careful, would be appreciated.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Chavez.
Hi there, it's Karen Chavez, Precinct 2. I think my biggest concern is probably what Cheryl Howard has said, that I'm afraid that a developer is going to come in there, is going to want the property, the whole property from Waldemar down to Walden Street. And if he waves enough money in front of this town, the rink is gone. I honestly believe that the rink should be left out of this. I understand what you're saying, that this is only a zoning issue right now. But I believe that if the rink stays in as part of this zoning for Central Business District, that it will be included no matter what you people say, and you will have no control over it at that point. I've also been told that if an RFP goes out, the RFP could stipulate that the rink is not part of the deal. Well, you know what? That's not going to work either, because if a developer comes in and he wants that whole property, he wants that whole property. And as far as the actual demolition, as part of the SBAC, I know that we did a little bit of a study as far as taking down the middle school and the auditorium, not the gym nor the rink. And it was around $900,000. And that was in 2016. So God only knows what it would cost a developer today to have to take down the middle school, the auditorium and the gymnasium, and hopefully leave the rink alone. I'm also on the rink committee, believe it or not. I'm on a lot of committees in this town, but I am on the rink committee. And for the last 4 or 5 years, we have hired 2 architects at 2 separate times to plan for us to put in new locker rooms. We have been shut down each time. No, I don't want to say shut down. That's not the right word. We've been asked to hold back because of not knowing what's going to go on with that property. I think we've invested enough money. By we, I mean the rink. The rink is self-sufficient. The town puts not a nickel into that rink. That is all monies that come in. Bobby Demento does a super job down there. He rents that ice, and his workers work down there. They keep the place clean. They keep it nice. And that's why it's the way it is. But we have to think about these things. And I really want to get going to get in the new locker rooms, because that is going to help the town. That'll help people coming into the town for tournaments who will go into the center and use the center businesses. You know, I just keep repeating myself, and I'm sorry about that. But, and I also, with Shannon, she's absolutely right. We have to be very careful. Yeah, we might get $300,000 back in taxes, but what is it going to cost to educate the kids that are going to live in those houses, to empty their trash, and to plow their streets? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Suzanne Carson? Suzanne, you there?
I'm sorry, I'm just listening. I didn't mean to hit anything.
Oh, okay. Okay, no
Sorry about
problem. Okay, Mike DiLuso. Oh, my goodness. DiLuso.
That wouldn't hurt, Denise. Mike DeLuiso, Precinct 5. First of all, thank you all for taking this on. I
mic is off.
efforts.
I shut mine off. It is.
You know,
Yes,
I'm not going to go
my
into.
mic is off.
Sorry, someone needs to mute. I think it's
Yes,
10.
unmute. I'm gonna
Yeah.
mute everybody.
Yeah, I don't know if everybody stays in this or do they go back out to the other panel side? I don't
I
know.
send them out.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm gonna mute.
Okay, sorry, Mike, can you please start again? So we couldn't
Quite
hear
all
you.
right.
Everyone's still on as a panelist.
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you to all of you for taking this on. I know it's not easy. I'm Mike DeLuiso, Precinct 5. I don't know if that came through before. I'm not going to go into the rink because I agree with what's been said, that it's important. I just want to go out and say that we have to remember that no matter what we do with this site, we are not going to make everybody happy. And I
Mike DeLuiso.
I am so glad that we're taking the time to look at this and make sure we get it right. But at the same time, we've been kicking the can down the road, and we've been kicking the can down the road. And as somebody once said to me, at this point, we're up to our wasting cans. The time has come where we need to figure out what this is going to be, whether the town wants to keep it for some sort of future use, whether it becomes CBD, stays residential, whatever it becomes. But it's just, we can't keep putting this off. And I hope that you and the council can come to a consensus and just figure out what the best use of it is, both for the neighborhood and for the town as a whole, so we can move forward and get back to having on the tax rolls.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you.
Okay, I wonder if everyone in the audience could please mute. Okay, we have Jack Dowd. Nope, Jack's off. We have Jim Lettieri. Jim, you there?
Jack Dowd's back into.
Yes,
Okay. Okay, so, okay, we'll get Jack after Jim. Okay, Jim, you're up.
I appreciate taking the call. I know we're going to have a lot of time to talk about this over the next probably couple of months, but I just wanted to make a few comments. Obviously, it's not a big secret. My feelings on the rink, they've been well published. I was the counselor who made the motion a couple of years ago to take it off. But I think listening to Stephen Hines' remarks, he made, I think, a really good point on, a lot of this comes down to the size of the parcels, and you guys only have, it looks like, 2 parcels to work with. I guess more of a question, and maybe Bob or you guys could comment on it after. Do you have the ability, and I know this is something that would have to go through the town, and I don't know what the time frame would be, is to, it seems to be a consensus. A lot of people think the rink should stay. Obviously, I'm one of them, but just on the parcels in general, the best way to alleviate this is to subdivide the plots. So now we're physically taking, maybe we're making the middle school smaller. So now if that's residential A, it's more attractive to people and is not, it's not too much room. I didn't know what ability we had as a town to subdivide the lots, and this could potentially take the rink right off the table, and now we're not even dealing with it. And it's better for a developer to come in to see actually what is for sale and what is not for sale. Is that something that would be at, like Bob said, we're at step 2. Is that something that's more step 6, 7, or is that something that can be discussed now? Thank you, guys. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir. Great comment.
Okay, Jack Dowd.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to read something from the middle school rezoning summary findings. And it's dated November 16, 2020. And it was on the last page of this report. In the middle of the page, the next step, recommendations to planners, planning board, to the town of Winthrop. Complete a site survey with further research to clearly define property boundaries. I've been asking this town to do this for 3.5 years. It's recommended by VHB and Geoffrey Logan to do this. I'm wondering when somebody's going to take on this task. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comment.
Can
Okay.
someone answer that for me?
One, public comments closed. That is definitely one of the topics we're going to take up, Jack. That's a great question and good comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have, I think everybody's, Jimmy, you all set? Jimmy, you all set?
All set. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Mike, are you all set?
Sorry.
No problem. Everybody's leaving their hands up. That's
Yeah, okay.
too many buttons.
I think, okay, oh, we have Sean Donahue.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Sean Donahue, resident of Precinct 1. I just want to follow up on a comment that Jim Lettieri made regarding the prospects of subdividing the property. I believe that's on parcel 2. I think that's a fantastic idea and something worthy of investigation. The ability to subdivide that property could inevitably take the rink off the table. And that's something that I would propose. If you were to vote to include the rink in the rezoning, possible development of the rink site will remain on the table, and at the risk of those of us who have advocated for the rink, which, as you can see, there's a tremendous amount of support in the community for the Larson rink. I've been teaching kids voluntarily down the rink for the past 37 years. I've taught over 5,000 children in this community how to ice skate. So it's something that I'm very passionate about. I was a former president of the Winthrop Youth Hockey Association, and I know there's many, many families in this community that have benefited from the use of the rink. So I implore you to look into the possibility of subdividing the lot that Councilor Lettieri had suggested. I think it's a fantastic idea, and I thank you for your time. I thank you for your service. Thank you.
Thank you. Great comments. And thank you for teaching all those kids about how to. You got to teach me. I'm terrible on
Come on
skates.
down
so
Sunday
thank you.
mornings.
Okay, I might. Thank you.
Skate clinic.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions at this time? I see no other hands raised.
Okay.
I think we're good.
Okay. So at this point, I'm going to, Denise, I guess point of clarification, what this matter is, I believe, is not going to be over tonight. So I don't know if I want to close public comment. We're just going to discontinue it or pause it. What,
You
is
can
there-
continue it.
Okay, I can continue it for later. All right, so we'll continue that to our next meeting because I do think it's a conversation that needs to be had with the public, very engaged public, which is the key to success in this thing. So we're going to stop tonight so that we can discuss this as a matter of the board. Denise, I don't know. I'm looking at a screen with a lot of members of the public on it. Is there a way to move people back to the non-panelist side of things just so I can see a little better? I don't know. But
Yeah, they should all be. Let me try it out. Yep.
Every
Okay.
caller is still a panelist from my view.
Yeah, I thought I removed them all. Okay, let me check. You can go on.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. So if it pleases the board, I have a short presentation just to try to get us on a kind of common thread, common understanding about what it is we're talking about. And Gina, it's great that you asked me to kind of talk about those issues, but we can get into them a little bit more about what the questions are. And also just sort of how we as a board would go about addressing them and answering them. And again, this is open meeting law, so this is not the planning Bob, this is the planning board. And so this presentation might be something that I threw together, but it is a work in progress here that this group needs to co-author to do together as a group here. And so it is not perfect. It again is a draft. It is a sketch of how we move these motions forward. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Just let me know if you guys can see that when it comes. You guys see that now? Anyone? Yes?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay,
Yes,
great.
yep.
Okay, great. So I'm going to think this will work. Yeah.
It's
So,
beautiful.
thanks. All right, one slide's good. All right, we got
We're
buy-in.
done.
So again, it's not an exhaustive slideshow. I think it's like 8 or 10 slides, but it just tries to get to the point of what we're trying to do here. And I think for me tonight, my goal is to kind of set us up for success and have a process that understands the questions first off, understands the context around the questions and the ramifications of how our answering them, yay or nay or maybe, will have effects elsewhere. I think those were a lot of kind of points I heard in the public comment as well. Folks understand that some of the decisions we make here will have effects beyond these two sites, not only on their abutters, but at other precincts or other CB sites if we were to go that route. And there's what other options we have. And again, I just want to reiterate for the folks that didn't hear it the first time, we are not also the board interested in stopping hockey from being a tradition here in Winthrop. And I have not heard anything to the contrary from anyone in town. And so that's not something that I'm going to advocate. And I don't think any of the other members are going to advocate for removal of hockey. I think the mantra is not a day without hockey in Winthrop, and I think that's the goal. I would ask us to just kind of suspend disbelief just for a second about having the hockey rink be part of the conversation just for a little bit, and why that could be beneficial and why that couldn't be. And we'll maybe talk a little bit about that as we go through this and have some discussion on the backside. I ask the board to please feel free to interrupt and ask questions, because it's very important that we all understand what we're talking about, so we have a chance to sort of clearly educate the public about what's going on, and then ultimately make a clear recommendation to the town council on what we as a board feel is best for the community, given all the pushes and pulls and desires for this this site. So I'm gonna get going. So the first thing I want to do is just sort of talk about how there's been a lot of laying of the groundwork for this meeting tonight. This conversation, as many of the people just noted, didn't begin tonight, and it became well back before 2000, maybe 2014, 2016, with Economic Development Citizens Advisory Committee that did a sort of mini master plan around the center area. So I'm seeing my notes here. So and that had the support of Mass Development, and they're a sort of the sort of quasi-public developmental arm. So that was an important piece to think about. And I just say that because it is still an important piece to think about. I think one of the folks was asking, it's not just about initial, like, oh, what do we get for a sale? But it's about the impacts broadly. And it's also about whether there's market feasibility for these things, right? And also that initial project had the help of the Metro Area Planning Council, which is a sort of, they give us grants to help us do the work we do. They support this volunteer board's efforts. And I'm happy to say that the town has now acquired, that we have a town planner on staff that is also going to help assist this very important process that we're about to undertake. So, we may continue to need outside help, but it's great to have some inside help as well. And so we're happy to welcome her to this mix. That's Rachel Kelly. So and kind of, again, these kind of keep building on one another. There was a community visioning that happened over 2000, just ended 2001, called WIN 2030. And again, that reached over 600 members of the community and get their input on a number of things, from use to desire, and what do you think is the worst thing about town, what's the best thing about town, a really broad survey of things. And it was again, great information that we're going to sort of bring into the fold and understand, as well as the more recent things that just happened this month, the conclusion of, I think, a year-long or close to at least 10-month-long work that the Joint Subcommittee on Rules and Ordinance, as well as Economic Development from the Town Council, made these recommendations. And we have some, not only these pure questions, but we have, through Peter and Tracy, or Councillor Christopher and Councillor Honan, has really helped articulate why they made some of the choices. But we're also gracious enough to understand that it is a recommendation, not a rule, and that it was up to us to also do our due diligence to understand what those implications are of those rules. And because I think we're all trying to get to the same goal, we maybe need to kind of define that and put it in writing a little better, but we're all trying to do what's best for Winthrop and make, and have a win-win-win for the whole place, right? That's what we're trying to do. And then, thanks to the town council, there's been members of the town council. Jim Lettieri was on the call tonight, and town council president Boncory also just, have been in this soup for a long time, talking about it and advocating for their constituency as well. And we thank them for now, giving it to us and letting us have a moment to go through and discuss how to move forward. So I also just want to pause for one sec. Just thank you for all the people that were doing all those things. And just like the 50 or so plus people that are here tonight, thank you for participating, because these things don't work if it's just a few of us in a room talking. We need the support of the community broadly. We may not, at the end of the day, agree exactly on what should happen here, but we do appreciate the comments and, again, the respectful disagreements that, again, make it great to be here. I just want to thank you. But there's been years of those. Folks have been on and engaged for years, and people may be just hearing about this today, or maybe see it next week when it's on WCAT. I welcome you to the conversation. Your voice is necessary for its success. So yes, we are looking at this site, and it's actually 2 parcels currently, and we're going to refer to them as parcel 1 and 2 in a second. But just looking at the broad outlines of the red outline here, it's kind of unfairly discussed as, or inaccurately called, the middle school redevelopment. But as you can see, the middle school redevelopment is probably 25% of the site that is before us right now to be considered. And it goes from west to east: middle school, auditorium, gymnasium, the parking in front of the gymnasium, as well as parking in front of Larson Rink and Larson Rink, as well as a piece currently used as the backstop for the baseball field on Ingleside Park, right? So that currently is the outline that is being discussed. I think it's important also not to just get stuck inside that red box. I think a lot of the people calling and that are interested are folks that are outside the red box, right? So starting from the west side is Valdemar Avenue and Wheelock Street, and that residential neighborhood both to the west and slightly to the north of that. Ingleside Park, which in and of itself has both open space and recreational use of hardscape, like tennis courts and skate parks and basketball courts and alike, as well as some parking that supports, and if it's partly for the rink and partly was expanded when everyone was squished in here while they were building the high school. So anyway, that's the context there. And to the right is more of the civic-based, town-owned property. The E.B. Newton Cultural Center with a mix of public and private use happening as a lease in that space. And the Gorman, I'm sorry, the Cummings School, wrong kid. The Cummings School further on down, a new municipal parking directly across. And then basically bordering most of the site to the south is the Central Business District. CVS is the largest parcel that you see directly across from the auditorium and gym. And then there are some more residential neighborhoods across from that as you move west down Pleasant. So just to kind of set the context of the limits of what we're talking about right now, but not the limits of our thinking about their effects on the area and how those areas are being used currently. So this slide came directly from the work that came from the Joint Subcommittee on Economics and Rules. And they've also laid a lot of new groundwork for us, and it answers somewhat of the question about survey and limitations of the site. So there's a town GIS survey that has an understanding about what all the square footages of each of the spaces are, but also the parcels associated with them. And this is actually zooming further out. You can see more of that context, more of that hardscape being used for recreation on the end of Ingleside Park to the north, as well as the Pillar apartment complex that is further down Weldon Street. Again, it kind of important to think about, but one of the things that I'm grateful for the group that came before us was the specificity of understanding the legal background about the sites themselves and their boundaries. And I think there was a comment about the fact that they're imparceled right now as the 2 sites. And this is I don't know if my thing's in the way here, but it basically says plan of land for Winthrop, and this is from 2017. And it's essentially a plot plan that has meets and bounds of the site. Now, in terms of survey information, it doesn't have the survey information of other things that we would probably want to have and would need to have before development happens here, such as underground utilities and topography. But it does do a good job of outlining the limits of this site and the context and the abutters to it, right? At least what I'm showing you on this one page. And so the breakdown is, I'll go from west to east because I kind of think that way, off of Wheelock Street. And thank you, Peter Gill, for clarifying that Waldemar Ave is not just the side street. It actually kind of hooks through, and that is an adjacent property in Wheelock Street moving beyond. It might not be obvious looking at a map that way. And then the middle school site, for the most part, is on and takes completely up all of parcel 2, although there are some linkages over to the auditorium space and kind of a corner of it that bleeds into currently parcel 1. Parcel 1, just for sense of scale for everyone, is auditorium space is this chunk here. The next big block is the Parks and Rec currently using that area for gymnasium space in here, and there's a sort of low space in front of it. That's kind of a hall. And the final and to the east space is the Larson Rink and some supporting spaces around it. Okay. North is up and to the right on this plan. So again, thinking about this, but thinking about the context next to it, and thinking about the limitations and opportunities there. So Gina, this slide I hope will do better than me fumbling through it before. When you asked that the matters before us are fivefold. They're not just, hey, what do you want to do at the middle school site? They are, what do you want to do with parcel 1? And the recommendation that's before us is to have parcel 1, which is the combined auditorium, gymnasium, and rink, to center business district. So include that in the zoning of the center business district, and to the ramifications of that, having those be together. So once something goes into another zoning district, the rules of that zoning district would apply to it. And as we move forward in the process, we can talk about that. And rezoning parcel 2, so which is the middle school site, to residential A. And I think it's kind of important to think about this. It goes to the public comments about whether lots should be subdivided or not. So there, I think as a board, we'll look at the benefits or negatives of subdividing a lot, and whether the whole parcel should be looked at as a whole, as opposed to having it even cut up more than 2. So I think all of that is on the table in terms of what we should be discussing. Right now, this is an example of what I think the planning board will look at these recommendations, but feel the need to explain to the public what would happen if we say yes, right? So the good example I can use is that parcel 2, and it came up a couple times during the conversation. And I take these recommendations seriously in terms of their context and their intent. The intent is to have something that is compatible with a residential neighborhood and not overwhelm it. I heard the word monstrosity. I hope we're not the monstrosity board. I don't want us to be that way. I want to be seen as productive and helpful to the community. But if we took that recommendation, the recommendation to have residential A on parcel 2, that would mean the entire site of the middle school would be limited to a single building that is 1 family, or a single building that is 2 family on that entire lot. And it could be subdivided to get that up to a different thing, but also I think there's a balancing act there. So that's why, again, I appreciate the work that was done before us. I appreciate it for its intent, but it is now, I think, our job's responsibility to explain the ramifications of a yay or nay on this, and then what we would recommend to still meet the goals of the adjacency of the neighborhood and the town in general, but also to just explain the sort of complexities of that. And I'm even parking the whole bit I have on whether somebody would want to buy that parcel, could take on the demolition costs, sell a single 2-family unit on it, and make that work, right? I don't think you have to be a professional to realize that math is probably tough. So we're going to talk about that. So on the other side of the sheet is both explicitly talked about, because it has implications on the site which is currently being discussed. But because they're changes to the zoning law that itself will have ramifications across the board in other places. Like for instance, the first one is about an issue on parking. And again, I want to commend Councillor Honan and Councillor Christopher's groups for really finding like the kind of hot spots that we really need to have our eye on the ball on, right? And parking, and the parking in lieu of rule. Now, I'm first to admit that the current parking in lieu of, I did it again and I'm going to continue to do it, payment in lieu of parking rule is broken. And we need to fix that. How we fix it is a question. We could fix it by eliminating entirely, which is what is the matter before us. We can take that as a yes or no, or we can, I would hope we would take a little bit of time and talk about that. And it had some intention, it's just not there. And how to kind of fix that broken loop of good idea to bad rule, so it doesn't become a loophole. So if they put X amount of housing, there is not a one-time check that's written and goes into some ether that no one ever sees again and doesn't help the people that are going to be displaced by the parking. So that I think is a very important thing. And again, I commend the Joint Committee on sending that to us. And that's something that we need to think about. But that does have implications because that has implications in the Center Business District. And that would also be a rule that would apply to anything in the Center Business District. Some people may say, great. Some people may say, well, hold on a second. Let's think about that. So that's just, again, why we need to think both inside that red box and outside of it. Next one is height. Again, thank you. Great point. It is part of a friction point that happened on the Evolve property of the old Family Dollar when a property in the Center Business District happened to be up against a residential site, and what height limitations are there and whether they should be across the board or over a certain distance from that property line. Great recommendation to think about, and I think it's up to this board to think about what that means. Is 75, it's a kind of porridge too hot, too cold, just right kind of thing. And think about what 75 feet means and how that overlays not only on the big sites we're talking about, and quite frankly, the sites, both parcel 2 and 3 are huge sites relative to the sites and how they're cut up in the Center Business currently, right? So 75 feet to the rink site, no problem. 75 feet to Blackstrap, that's interesting, right? So thinking about like how different parcels are, how these would affect them is important. And the last one is mixed use. And again, this is something that is a across the board issue. And I have to, we're going to talk about this in more detail. But for instance, this is changing whether the frontage on a property. So think about the most mixed use we have are in, again, in the CB nearby to this site. And right now, currently in the books, the idea is that you have an active streetscape, the active frontage on the first floor is 100% business. And again, whether that's a good fit for a scale of something small, the La Siestas, the Hong Kong Dragons, like those types of spaces makes perfect sense, right? That's not too onerous of an ask to be 100%. But it does make sense. And I think, again, the committee before us has hit on something, whether requiring a residential mix, if that's where we end up with residential on top and retail on the bottom, whether the length of Pauline Street or the length of any of those parcels along Pauline Street, the full length of it is the right amount to ask, or is it too burdensome? Or do we want to have some variety and not just that? And would that overwhelm some of the businesses that we currently have in the CB? So that's what's before us. It's a lot, and there's a lot of messiness that kind of goes in and out of them, but they're right on target with the most important things that are for the sites in front of us, as well as the CB district in general. And a lot, I think, of those height issues of scale and fit that we're hearing residential A folks worry about, myself included. So I want to talk a little bit about how we start to solve some of those things. So I think, again, as a first step, it's a synthesis of all this information. We've been talking about things and we've got piecemeal things all the way back from 2014. Some of it's good, some of it's junk, but trying to sort of bring the best of it together and talk about it, educate ourselves, educate the public in general about what the goals are. When we have new information that has just come out of the WIN 2030 that I mentioned, as well as information from the Joint Committee, because they've had public hearings after public hearings, and they've done a lot of work with their consultant. So bringing that to the top and just kind of getting that all together and getting the kind of best of that is still most relevant, memorized from each of the members of this board, and God help me, memorized with all the members of the community, right? And what we're going to need to do, though, is kind of put it through this filter of a kind of analysis and then continue to get some feedback as each of these meetings are public meetings. We're going to open the public comment and we're going to hear how we're doing along the way as we start to bring that information together, teach each other about what some of the limitations are on that site and what some of the limitations we want to have. And at the outcome of this is going to, at the end of the day, we're legally obligated to sort of answer the town council on their motion, which we will do. But it would behoove us to kind of go beyond that and to help fix our zoning beyond just answering these questions and saying yes, no, maybe, and send it back as quick as possible like a hot potato. But we do need to think about ultimately that the RFP, this is the request for proposal from a developer for this site, right? We want all the thoughts and good work that's gone into this for years to get codified into that document and in the form of development regulations and limits and protections for the town. I heard some nervousness about that in the public comments, and I'll talk about that a little bit more when I get into the timeline. But we own the town, just like you own your own house. And if somebody walks by and says, I'd like to buy your house for $5, you're not obligated to sell it to them, right? And so we are in the driver's seat. Not to say that we don't have work ahead of us and we can't be soft at all. We need to kind of deliberately go through that and make sure everybody's issues are addressed. But we are also in the driver's seat. So a developer is not going to come in and do what he wants. A developer is going to go in and not until they've been vetted and they've gone through competition, and then that developer is selected by the town. Okay, so and we can talk a little bit about that in process. So in those phases, what are some of the things that I think we need as part of synthesis to understand how to make a good decision? The context we need, the education we need to make a good decision. So I think one of them was brought up. I think Mr. Dowd brought it up. I think I know someone else did too, and I'm sorry, I'm a lot of names. Land value and boundaries, about the site survey, what was it, has it been done, whatever. So I think we have some of those line values. We want that clad in steel, understanding what that is and what's going on. We also want to understand the land value. So we want to look at other comparable sizes of land, either unencumbered or not, what those values are, to just understand what that maximum value is, the best case scenario. And then we also want to start to think about it when we start doing things like making it smaller by either subdividing it, removing large chunks or small chunks from it, and that value gets smaller. And the reason that's important is that there are things we want to have happen on that site, and there are things that I keep using the analogy of the teeter-totter, which I don't know if they're outlawed now in playgrounds, but when I was a kid, it was always fun. You wanted to be with somebody who's about your size, otherwise it's not very fun. And so the limitations of the value of that land for any potential sale have to be and are going to be balanced by all the goals that we have as a community of what we're doing. Site infrastructure and analysis. We know there's already been some planning for site infrastructure at Ingleside Park. Adjacent to this, we want to understand how that would tie into this and do some analysis about how that could be a symbiotic effort, or maybe not, but at least be aware of it. There are certain challenges that we have. Again, it's a small site in a sense that it has a lot of people thinking about it and lots of goals in mind of what could happen there. it probably can't do everything, right? So I think as a community, we're going to have to kind of understand what those challenges are, and then understand the opportunities. People are saying this is like the last big thing in Winthrop. It's not untrue, but it is a move that we need to think about together and work for this, and think about what the opportunities this can open up. And I think we all agree there should be more than just like a one-time payment, right? Like there should be long-time community benefit from this, and that can come in many forms, and we'll talk about those. Economics and feasibility, again, that is that teeter-totter. Is it going to work? If we ask for too much and ask for limitations too much, maybe it will never get developed. That's probably not a great outcome either. So trying to kind of work those out. And then funding opportunity for planning and construction. So zoning analysis, everything again is this feedback, stakeholder things. We're going to have to make some choices. We're going to have to make some goals, and then we're going to have to turn those into form of guidance. Turn those into zoning changes, probably not just for these sites, maybe elsewhere within the zoning, like things like the parking we talked about, and then design guidelines. Do we need design guidelines? Those are protections about fit and character and the things that make Winthrop Winthrop. That's going to be important to talk about. Those are kind of beyond just initially answering this question. Again, providing that guidance and development control, right? That's the thing that I hear is nervous. Once it goes to a developer, they're going to take the rink. That is absolutely not true. It doesn't have to be. It could be if we just said, hey, what do you want to do? But that's not at all what this leadership is looking for from the town council. And again, we're going to talk as a group, but I don't think we're the kind of planning board that's just like roll the dice. And then also just to help support and pick that person. So and the selection of that person and their comparables and whether what they're proposing fits. So again, there's a sort of draft timeline here. And again, it's a draft. This is again my first whack at this. And we're here, the big green dot where we've just had that motion brought to us. And I think in the next little bit, the first thing we're going to be doing is that site zoning and understanding that, and that site analysis both on the site and adjacent to it. And I think over the course of the next, and we have to respond in the next, I guess 65 days. I thought it was 90, but that's fine. We can adjust this. That's why it's draft. We have to give some kind of response to that. And I think our goal would be to give a response with direction on, if not this, then what? After that, I think we're going to be looking at design guidelines. That might be the next logical step. And once we've established some of those design guidelines, I think there'll be some market sounding. And whether that's through the planning board or with the help of the town manager's office or led by the town manager's office, understanding if we're in the right ballpark of some of the things that we want to have happen are a right fit for the real world and who's going to pay for it and whether it's going to work. And I think what we're talking about here is also the helping draft language for that RFP. We've had some proposals go out in the world before that were unsuccessful, mainly because I think it could have been market timing, it could have been how they were written, but I think the more clear we are as a community, the more clear we are about what we'll get, and the more or the less risk a developer sees and they get it. And then after that, again, these go out, you have to leave some time to both have them bid and be evaluated. And then there's some, the magic moment where the town of Winthrop decides when that happens, they make that selection of the bidder. So I'm going to stop blabbering on. I know I've gone on too long, but it's a really exciting thing. And I wanted to be clear for a lot of folks about all the steps that we're about to embark on with this, both in answering on the short term, but then long-term planning to support these needs. So with that, I'm going to stop, and I want to open it to the board for questions, comments, and you can tell me to keep this on, or we can shut it off, or whatever the will is. Tell me.
I was gonna say keep it up, but I'm not pick a slide to scroll back to. That's like a good point of discussion. maybe it's this one, the
This one?
last one. I mean, we're charged with making a decision as it falls within this timeline, right?
Yeah, again, the timeline, let me go back to this. So this is a prettier version of the motion that was sent to us, but we have to, and I clarified that with Denise, we have 65 days, give or take right now, to respond to that, these motions that were brought before us, right? Or recommendations, and they want a recommendation back. So there's, we could just say, I don't like them. That could be a quick response we could do tomorrow, but I think they want more than that. They're relying on their expertise. I just don't want to put it back in their lap. What I think we can do is say, respond to these things and then, decide to do more things, which will certainly take longer than 65 days to do right.
Procedurally, do we have to respond to all of them at the same time, or can we respond as we complete them?
Interesting question. I think we could probably, answer what we can. If we for some reason need more time because we can't answer them, we can certainly take them on linearly. We could probably, respond by punting on one if we needed more time to say, hey, we'll get back to you. Again, it would be nice and more than just a goal to be able to comprehensively respond to these things and or add a few more that we find along the way that would help the town council make this pretty important decision on the zoning.
No, I agree. The reason I asked was in the event that we're stuck on one, but comfortable with our decision on the rest, like would we hold everything up because of, and miss the time requirement because we can't come to a decision on one, or could we, submit the ones that we have gotten comfortable with? So I was just curious.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a risk of that. And I think it's a good question. I think I can ask for that clarification. I'm sure they're probably love to hear from us as soon as possible, as long as we feel comfortable. And I think that would be our call. If we didn't feel comfortable making a recommendation as a board, then we obviously can't, send it on to them. So hopefully that doesn't happen, but and we'll try not to, but I hear you. What else? I did a lot of talking. What do you guys think?
I think the combination of a lot of this presentation and also the comments that came in at the beginning of the meeting, which I'm glad that we did first, lent a lot of strength to the need to be more illustrative and specific about what the implications are of these recommendations. What does this look like? What does that mean when we say residential A on this particular site? Not just in terms of the form or like how many houses, oh, that's one house on that whole site. But just to put that out there, to make this zoning jargon something that the average person in town can understand, because this is such a massive site and a massive opportunity that doesn't come along that often in development in general, let alone in a geographically constrained town like Winthrop. So, what an opportunity we have to communicate that more specifically, and also to open up opportunities to make this a process that's robust and transparent, and then invites a robust relationship with a developer or developers, which is commonplace, and that results in clear outcomes and responsibilities to the community. And so it's not just a blank check. It's not just we put it up for sale and then the developer, or he or she, comes in and does whatever they want. There's a deliverable, and it's a partnership. And I've seen that happen, throughout the region, throughout the nation, in the form of things like community benefits agreements that are really built-in protections for the community, as well as a deal that works for the developer. And that can happen if we lay out that roadmap, and this is our opportunity to do that.
Yep, great point. I think putting this image up and what you were just saying about kind of working together through a process, one of the other I guess side effects of deciding one parcel would be, say, Res A and the other parcel would be CB, is that there are actually different governing bodies that review the process of those two sites, right? So if, for instance, parcel 1 became CB, well, that is under the jurisdiction of the board that you're seeing right now on the screen here. That's the planning board jurisdiction, and anything that would happen in that. Alternatively, parcel 2, if it were to go into residential A is a zoning board of appeals process. And again, they're another board in town, it's just different. And I just look at that as, I'm not gonna kind of start to throw weight around about what's better, what's best, but I do know it's easier to kind of be in one process in something this complicated as opposed to being part of 2 separate boards to try to have a cohesive thing. So it's just something for us to think about and weigh as a group about wanting to have the best outcome and how we think we can get there process-wise.
Bob, just a general question. A while back, we had passed a motion to try to get a survey map of all the CBD. I know it didn't include this middle school site, but I think there was a public comment earlier that asked about the status of a survey for this that shows true lot lines. Do we know the status of that, or if we have one?
I don't.
I'm just saying
generally. I don't have an official status on that, but I can say that I know of. I know that the town manager's office and the town planner were looking at that, and I can't say moving forward. I don't know that that's true yet, but they had received that, and then we're laying some groundwork towards doing that. Because I think that's important, because it's just we refined the CB in terms of a new plan, but what we were asking for the benefit of the public was a new zoning map of the entire community from end to end to clarify what the zones are across the board. So that's kind of an important piece that we would like to have in place, again, laying the accurate foundation moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, so if you just go back to that last slide that you were on, that I think had some dimensions on it. The overall lot 1 and lot 2 slide that you had up.
I'm sorry, say again, that you want me to go to this guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason for the question, and we just heard some of the community goals from the earlier public comments. And I think some of the comments were even about subdividing out the rink from lot 1, dividing the auditorium and that. I mean, so if the other recommendation to us is 2.5 stories of height adjacent to Res A within 75 feet, 2.5 stories is Res A zoning, and that's allowed in Res A today.
Mm-hmm.
That essentially means by the recommendation we have, lot 2 would be Res A, and then 75 feet from the boundary lot 2 on both sides would also be essentially Res A, 2.5 stories.
Yeah, I'm gonna just kind of keep up with you for a second here. Yep, so that eyeballing here about 75 feet. If this was Res A to the left, another 75 feet. I guess it would be parallel with that line, something like that. Can you see that orange?
Yep.
Okay.
And then if we subdivide out the rink, which is a goal, or keep the rink as part of the project, and then 75 in the other way as Res A. So I mean, not to say that this is zoning. These are some community goals we heard from the comments, and some recommendations from zoning. I just want to kind of point out that the community would then have to make a decision that we would be funding at the cost that we know to be $2 to $3 million to demo the middle school site, knowing that we were funding that as a donation simply to allow people to build single families here. There wouldn't be a return on that cost. And we'd be stuck with, not stuck with, but we would simply be looking at this site as only to continue Res A, but single family residents would not be paying to demo a $3 million middle school site. The town would have to do that in advance of these lots being subdivided. So some of the goals and the recommendations seem inherently at odds with each other financially. So I just want to kind of hearing some of that tonight and seeing some of the dimensions of the actual site to maintain Res A on lot 2 and also maintain the middle school and subdivide interior lot. I think it's just economically unfeasible for the site. So I think that digging in with the town planner and trying to understand some comps of land value in neighboring towns in the area And what different zoning designations could allow for land value might be an important step. And I'm happy to kind of connect the town planner and see if we can track some of that information down to share with the community at the next meeting. But there's a fiscal responsibility that we have as well. And I think that the town just needs to be aware, either we're in essence donating this land and paying for demo, or we're making a decision that this can add to economic growth in the town. Some of the other comments, we can pull the research together. I mean, the school system is a great concern and question. Hearing comments about, plowing streets or public safety or fire department, that's pretty easy information to pull together. I'm willing to kind of share that with you as well, Bob, but I think that it's a net sum game. We're not adding new streets. There's no new streets to plow. I think that the public services are not unduly burdened by 100 units. You're not looking at 2,000 unit development here. So that information, I think, is valuable for the town to see what the cost of this project will be on public resources. So those are great comments to hear tonight. I think it should be some of our burden to make sure we understand that.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Thanks for volunteering to jump in there. Yeah, I think that's what I want to do is also just, we've been talking this for a long time. Last thing I want to do is produce something else that's a pipe dream that just falls under its own weight, which is that's the teeter-totter scenario. And I think we're kind of looking at that now, and compatibility with that neighborhood versus that whole site going to Res A. I think that's definitely something that we should kick the tires on and understand the value and implications of what it means to just take it as is, and then what it could mean if not. There are some benefits. We've been talking all about slicing and dicing, but there is a benefit of losing the line between the two, and then using the RFP process and those community protections to say, you can have the whole lot X, but we want you to build us a new rink. And we want that new rink to be here, or we want it to have a buffer here. We want residential along that end, either before or after. And that, I think, is a very, I think it's a worthwhile academic conversation to have and put some rough order of magnitude numbers along with it. Now, I heard someone just say just under $1 million on the call. I think that was Ms. Chavez. And so I think we also owe it to the community to daylight exactly what we think those numbers are. And we'll do that with the help of the town manager's office and the town planner. So Chris, I think that's a great fact. So, somewhere between no dollars and $3 million is probably the truth, right? But it's not nothing, right? It's just not nothing. And having it fall under its own weight is not a goal I would hope this board has.
I mean, to the same, we just saw a comment come in. What about a public safety building? So I was going to point the same thing that those are great goals for the town. That kind of language could potentially be included in an RFP. You're asking a lot of a developer to do those things, but I think the reality is that a public safety building would have to be a taking by the town. We'd have to understand the cost of demo, which would be incurred by taxpayers. The cost of building a public safety building, likely a debt override incurred by taxpayers. So I mean, if the goal of the community is for all of us to spend more money on this, then I think that should be shared. But I just want to be eyes wide open as to these things are great visions to have. They all cost money. That has to come from someplace, so to put some of these things on a developer is burdensome, but I think maintaining a rink, renovating a rink, updating the rink that's there, that's language that can be included in an RFP, that this site can't be touched. And that's, that can be crafted with RFP language and zoning.
Yeah, I agree.
So Bob, is the question right now that you posed, is it about how to move this forward in a timely manner? Is that what we're discussing?
I think we're discussing an approach to it.
Okay.
I just heard Chris Boyce volunteer to help take on some of the realities of the economics and the comps with his development and architecture background. So for folks who don't know, that's a great resource that we have as part of this group. So I'm happy to hear Chris step up. So Honor, I think you're volunteering for something.
Yeah, so I have a not quite fully formed thought, but I'm kind of interested in, what does our current CBD zoning allow for in terms of dimensional and other kind of broad, but simple regulations, and same with some of the residential, so that, I could sum those up, take a look at those, and maybe list some of the impacts they would have if we changed some of those CBD regulations for this lot, what that impact might have on the other lots. Like, I can start to look at some of those regulational issues. But the second thing I wanted to add was, and this is totally out there for discussion, I could see if people wouldn't want to do it. If we're concerned about meeting a certain timeline, but we also don't want 4-hour meetings, would we want to do 2 meetings a month, or not necessarily every month? I know that we've done this in the past sometimes when we've had times when we've had a lot on the agenda, and I'm not saying we should do that. I just want to throw that out there as a potential option if we find that we have a lot of ground to cover, but I'm not going to be able to sit through a 4-hour meeting at the end of the day.
Yeah, I would definitely be in favor of that also in light of the timeline that we have that we're working with from the council.
Yeah, I think I Honor, thanks for bringing that up. I think that is a good way to help kind of create more space for ourselves to talk, because again, we operate by law in open meeting law. And so we're not, there's not like, what have you guys been up to last month? It's like, well, we can give each other homework and then we kind of meet back at school, right? So it is really sometimes very difficult, right? To just not like do it like I do at work and just get together around a table and just like work. But it's for the benefit of the public that we're having these meetings. And someone mentioned, can you inform us more often? That's a way to inform people more often. I feel like, we did have a lot of public comment. This is a really passionate thing. It's out of the gates. And I will say it is, again, with respect, a lot of the comments I heard were comments that I believe, right? I understand them, but they also have to be balanced. So it's a sort of thank you, and we got this, but I want to keep you informed, and I want to keep public still commenting on it. So yeah, I'd be happy to again, certainly within the 65 days if we want to try to meet sooner. But I also I feel like this meeting is really about setting that process, and having more frequent meetings helps us, as part of the process, because I don't even feel, but I'm just feeling a little overwhelmed with all of this at 10 of 9 after a long public comment that, see, we haven't even really talked about the matter at hand, right? So I feel like we need to get together a little more frequently. I'd support that.
Yeah, well, just to continue the thought process and not lose engagement, even though a month is not a long time, but I think we should definitely do that.
Anything else? Anything anybody else thought? Again, this is, best guess time-wise. And again, I was putting the answers-ish 65 days. I mean, maybe those arrows have to roll back a little bit, but I do think, again, we meet once a month typically. So I had that in mind, that it takes time to sort of bring up an issue, discover all the problems with it, go home and do homework, come back, argue about it, give the public opportunity to hear what we're doing, take on their feedback, make changes. So almost everything is a 3-month lift, where it's like issue and process up front, homework and feedback, and then recommendation. So it almost takes a natural 3-meeting thing. And that's, again, with no hiccups, and all the information's there.
I haven't signed up for homework yet, but I wanted to volunteer for one of them. If there's space for that. I mean, the decision about the pile up, the parking in lieu of, or now I'm doing it, Bob, payment in lieu of parking. There's a lot of context to consider before making a decision. I'll just get rid of it. For example, like, why do we have it? What is that tool for? How can or should it be used effectively, as opposed to how we are or aren't using it currently? I think it would be important to consider best practices before making that decision in a haste.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and for those who don't know, Julia has a degree in transportation. What is
Urban
it specifically? Urban planning.
Oh,
and-
yeah, urban
and
environmental
focuses-
policy planning, but
Yeah, and just has a kind of understanding about the issues, and was on the transportation advisory board for a while. So I think it's an important issue, and I think like anything, like what are the limitations of the rules, right? And I agree with folks, and I agree with the idea. As is, it's kind of a bad deal. It hasn't really burnt anyone yet because the opportunities have been fairly small to do it, and no
it
one's really
hasn't been
taken us up
triggered.
on it. It hasn't
Yeah.
really been triggered. And the way it's written right now, I don't know if it has limits. So I think that's the part we should talk about. If there's any value in keeping it, whether there should be some governors, some bumpers on the lane, right?
Yeah, I mean, all these things they're tools in the box to get the kind of development that yields the benefits for the community that we've now outlined in a variety of processes, not just the, all the meetings over the years and public comment like tonight, but in, most recently when 2030 and the master plan. And yeah, it's important to keep all of that in mind as we make decisions like this.
Absolutely. Steve's too quiet. He's been quiet the whole time. I made sure his eyes were open the whole time, but he's been quiet.
Writing notes down, so don't worry. Yeah.
So, Steve, I was wondering if we could partner and talk a little bit about the mixed use together and try to figure out, do a little homework together on that. I mean, you're a business owner in the CB, and to look at what that requirement would mean if that was just implied, and whether you feel as a sort of occupant, I'm just a visitor every Friday when I go to La Siesta, but I think it's an important thing to think about from a business perspective, and also from just again, as a member of this board, if you could help do that, that'd be great. Yeah, so I've got some comments going. So anything else? Gina's also been quiet, but she's asked a few questions, so I won't pick on her too bad. Does this, Gina, you're our, maybe you're our senior member right now. Does this timeline seem realistic? Ambitious? Could slip? Thoughts?
Yes, I do think it seems realistic. I do agree that with honor, the frequency in which we meet will need to be increased in order to meet it. But I think it's doable. Okay. Honestly, I think our meetings are more productive in a virtual environment than they are when we're in person. Seems like we get more done and we can hear each other better. So.
Yeah, both the public comment and this and then recording.
Yeah, both with public comment. Even the public comment seems more efficient. But I do also agree that assigning work to the members and having us meet back up and discuss, I think, will be the most efficient. We can't all be doing all of this.
No, yeah, I think that's what, like, I don't want to stop any members from having comments on any, I think it's your let fly, but I want to have sort of point people on each of these things to sort of champion them and be responsible for kind of pulling those resources together. And I believe the town planner was on the call. I don't know if she still is. I can't see all that.
Yeah,
right
I'm
now.
still here.
Oh, hi, Rachel Kelly.
Hi, Rachel.
So hi. And you're going to get sick of hearing us, but so it's going to be awesome. We're really excited to have you as being again a helpful member in town hall and being able to track down some of this information. Again, many people don't realize this. We are not on the payroll. The planning board is all volunteer. Our obligation is to meet monthly by charter, but we're hearing we're going to do more than that because this is really important. And we want to do right by the community. But it is helpful to have somebody with a day job that can devote lots of time and has an ear with the town manager as well. So, and I know Rachel is working on some of the stuff in the background already, helping to kind of pull together some of that information for us. And we hope to have her as a fixture at some of these or most of these meetings if possible, if not all. So I think the other thing is, you know, we should spend a little bit of time, and I recommend, again, if I could, to the public to go to the website and see the links to the WIN 2030 most recent thing. I'm not sure if the draft report from the joint committee is available to the public. It ought to be. That would be great if it were. And I think, you know, just kind of seeing some of the thoughts and some of the graphics that have gone into this before that help explain the issues in front of us is helpful. And I know we as a board will definitely do that, you know, for you know, to be prepared for next time, as well as all this other information. So I'm showing these blue bars. These are maybe more of the sort of public facing when we're ready to show and talk about these things. But I think honestly, we could just kind of run off and try to find as much information as we can on all these topics, you know, right out of the gate, just so we start to kind of build that vocabulary when it's time. Logically, they come up in the process, they'd be ready to come forward. And like I said, I think at some point during the middle of, you know, at some point, whether we have our own special community workshop for this, or if that's part of the design guidelines / language for the RFP, that's a question. So we can talk about how that gets scheduled. But I think, you know, we're going to have to make some choices. We can't say yes and can't say yes to everything and everyone. It's not going to work like that. There's going to be some trade-offs, and then set limitations, because I think that will help the developer, help people have less fear of the development in the developer. Anything else we want to talk about on this matter? Did everybody get a homework assignment that they wanted? Is there anything? And Kelly is gonna, I'm sorry, Kelly, Miss Rachel Kelly. I will be giving her plenty of homework assignments as long as she'll listen. And members of the board, anyone want to take anything specifically on in terms of certainly in the front half here, and I think Anna is jumping to what needs to happen too, which is land value, maybe land opportunities in a way when you look at just applying the zoning to the lots as is. And I hope Anna could game plan a little bit, but what if it wasn't, right? And show us a little bit of those options as well, so we could see the implications of rink in, rink out, rink rebuilt, rink not rebuilt, rink renovated, and then combine that with the realities of cost associated with those things. Anything else? Otherwise, I'm going to just move on real quick to the other matter.
Would it be helpful for before our next meeting, as far as us each doing research or homework, since we've talked a bit about community benefits agreements and protections, like examples of what that looks like and what that means? I've seen some questions about that. If we're opening this up to be a relationship with a developer, that's a process that's community-based. I mean, maybe it would be helpful for this board to bring forward examples of CBAs from other developments throughout the country, throughout the region, and what that process looked like and what this type of development resulted from it. As far as just making this feel more real and tangible for people. Yep. And sort of removing the sort of sense of a blank check that if this happens, that it's a giveaway and that we lose all of our rights to influence this really critical opportunity.
Yeah, and absolutely. I think that's important. So any background information, again, don't do it alone. If you have other ideas, other folks you want to bring into the conversation, certainly invite them to the meetings. You know, solicit advice from all corners. I think that's helpful. I was looking at some of the comments. I will make this available to folks. We will codify it as part of our meeting minutes, so it goes in there. And I should have said that there are some wonderful comments that were written by people, and some good advice for some people in the world of development as well as infrastructure that gave us some comments, as well as just more comments that saying they love the rink, which we love to hear, and we hear you loud and clear on. So that will all, I think, for the sake of transparency, which we hope to be completely, we are going to roll those in into the meeting minutes as well. So everyone else, because it's just not feasible for us to read. And I appreciate the long letters because they're really detailed and wonderful, but we just don't have the time to read them during these meetings. And it's also not fair for me to pick only a few because I have favorites and I don't want to do that. So the ones that thank me for all my work are the ones I like. Anyway, so if there's not anything more on this, we're gonna work with Town Hall and with via Rachel to help us make sure that the most current information from those from the recent efforts are there and are legible and shared to the public. So there's a common language. We're gonna do better on our meeting minutes, and we're going to, and that's my fault. We are going to review and make sure that we can approve our meeting minutes before our next meeting. And I think before we close this matter, when is our next meeting on this matter? Do we want to have one sooner than a month on this matter? I think the verdict was yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So Denise would know best about, well, we don't need a room anymore since we're like max headroom here.
A Zoom room.
We need a Zoom room
Right.
with a view. And
Right behind me. I did this for you guys.
yeah, that's good. That's good. I got a map of Winthrop. Does that count? That's not near as cool.
No.
And then my messy desk.
Better background. Guys, come on.
My computer can't handle it, and then I start fading in and out. It really freaks me out.
Blue screen.
Yeah, I know. I could invest in a green screen. So I think we need a little bit of time to do the homework. So because I don't want to have a meeting where we just talk about what we're gonna do. Would the 15th? That's 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out. So there's a Monday the 1st, then the 8th, then the 15th. Does that make sense? That gives, or should we do the 8th?
Well, would our normal meeting be on the 22nd? Right?
Yeah, our meeting is on the 22nd. So yeah, we don't want to, again, butt into that, right? So I guess we would probably want to do the 8th then, right?
Yeah, 2-week cadence.
Okay.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll meet and then we'll decide the agenda. I think for the most part, this thing will be the agenda on that. Since it's a special meeting, we won't have to do much more, but we should, Denise, we can set that and make that go public with the board. And I'm happy to work with that. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying we could actually do our extra meetings are just this particular subject.
Yeah. I'm just keeping myself a little bit, well, yeah, I think all things, this thing is going to all consuming pretty soon.
Right.
So there is some other matters of the use table and stuff that I think we want to try to put a bow on sooner than
That's
later.
right. We didn't even get to
And
that.
I don't know if it's part of this, but it might, take another meeting, obviously, to do that.
Okay.
So let's think. Okay, so good on this. Any other last thoughts? I'm going to stop sharing. Okay, so hearing none. There's a lot of good stuff in the chat. Do you know if, and again, I closed public comments, so I'm trying not to belabor things. Denise, does that stuff get saved when you save and record this stuff? The chat notes, or should I be trying to like screenshot them or something?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I can double check.
So you can save the transcript.
I can save the transcripts, right? Yeah. So I can save the
because it's public
transcripts.
record.
Right, yeah.
Let's just do that, and then we'll just do it that way. Shut up.
Yeah, I can do all that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. It's not my house. All right. So yeah. All right. So we're just going to continue this matter until the 8th. Okay. Great. We still had 41 people on, including us. So that's amazing. So thanks for hanging in there, everyone, and being passionate about this. The other matter we had on the agenda was kind of before all this, which I think is important about getting our ducks in a row about the use chart. And I'm hoping that there's a couple different ways to do it. It's just like, we'll do it as a matter of course while we talk about the middle school, which is complicated and would start to affect things. I feel like somebody's giving me an echo. Or the other way to think about it is, can we just get it over with, in a sense that, can we just kind of plow through and add the text that we want, indicate that there's missing definitions, ask either a member of this board or someone else, I'm looking at Rachel, to help define those things, and get our house in order on the uses that are allowed in these different zones as a foundation before we start deciding, the fate of the rink, or all these things that we're talking about on these things. So I'd love to hear what you guys think. Chris or Anna or Gina, anyone?
I can say that I don't have a lot of patience to talk about it tonight.
No. Yes. I don't have a lot of patience to talk about it tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, but
I
what to
get
do
your
is what I want
point.
to do.
I get your point of wanting to get it done, but given what we've just discussed, I don't see how that's realistic.
Okay.
I agree, and given the importance of it, I really don't want to rush through it.
Okay. So the danger of that, and I hear you, I think it could be too ambitious. There's a lot we got going on. The danger of not doing it even partially, if let's just say we lay up a little bit and fix it a little, is whatever it is what the basis of all this conversation moving forward is. And so I wonder, is there a happy medium? Is there a take the thing that exists now and just, make sure Res A is Res A. It's been Res A for a million years. Okay, fine, check the box. Look at CB, check the box, and make sure those uses are okay. And let the sort of the ideas that we had about reorganizing it based on blah, 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 park those for later. Would anybody take me up on that?
You mean to address the ones that are most pertinent to the project at hand, to the decisions at hand, so that we have at least that clarified and don't shoot ourselves in the foot having started with a process and not completed it when we needed it?
That's
so
kind of what I was getting at, but again, I don't want to overtalk people.
I do think that there's a way here that we can accomplish both in a comprehensive manner without creating any sort of conflict. I'd like to think about it a little bit, but at a minimum, I would think that if we just continue to work on the table, but not as an urgent priority, but sort of adding it to each agenda as a final topic to just address and have us continue to do the homework. I mean, a lot of the work that we were hoping to focus on was making sure the categories were appropriate, that the charts themselves were comprehensive. And I don't see why we should table that. It needs to be done.
Okay. So then that would be, you're advocating for, like, at the next meeting, so on the 8th, we have the lion's share of the conversation about hey, what did we learn about, payment in lieu of, and what did we learn about, if anything, the land value, and where are we with, whatever. We're going to talk about those types of things related specifically to the site.
Conceptually.
Yeah,
conceptually.
Yeah.
The other thing we could do is, if we're going to be meeting with more frequency, say every other meeting, we dedicate some time to this, so that, we're keeping the ball going.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I don't think it needs to be the same sort of priority as, the middle school, which I think we can focus most of our time on, but I don't think it needs to be one or the other. I think that we can accomplish both. We just can focus on them at different speeds.
So, and maybe for that, then, rather than having to look at a table and say, fill out, 40 different SP no yeses. I wonder if ahead of time we're like, okay, we're going to focus on these 5 lines so that we can look at them ahead of time and we can talk about them, but we're not trying to cover too much of the chart all at once.
Well, then I mean,
I don't know.
yeah, I mean, I think the question is whether there's any work to if there's any work to move forward on. Certainly not tonight. I think we're all spent, and I think it was a kind of a good conversation. We got some great public comment. We're going to do our best to address those issues that we did receive, and I think what we could talk about. I think, Anna, that might be a good way to do it. Is if we say we're not gonna try to get it all done ahead of time, but at least if we're all focusing our shooting on one section at a time, then we can at least, methodically kind of go through it. And I'm happy to hear motions about, changing Res A or whatever, but if there's some things that we wouldn't change because they're just kind of standing for a very long time, and what will we change it to? I think that's fine. So let's plan on that. So can we now, again, I'm going from memory here, but Res A I think is 2 lines and CB is a significant amount more. Can we just try to do that as part of our homework and just say, can we look at CB and see what our take is on that, and then compare notes as a group when we get back together on CB? And I would say, I'm looking at the top half of my screen, so it's Julia, me, and Chris on the top half of my screen. I would say start at the top of that list and make your recommendations of yes, no, maybes. And then on the bottom of my screen is Gina, Anna, and Steve. If you want to start at the bottom of that list and make your recommendations, so we don't all just have recommendations on the same thing. I don't know, just as a means of sort of spreading out the load a little bit, and we have a snowball's chance of being done with that in the next meeting or two, time permitting at the end of them.
You're saying come essentially for dialogue, but with the semblance of emotion.
Well, that's interesting. My baby step to coming with an semblance of emotion would be to take that chart that we had been using as a sort of working chart and fill in your answers to the chart, right? And then when we have a discussion about it, we can open up a chart, one of our charts, whoever answered that row, and we can say, anybody got yes, anybody got no, anybody got special on restaurant or whatever, right? And anybody recommend no changes, right? And so as a group, we can agree, and if there are no changes, we just move on. If there are changes, those are the things that we'd have to roll into some sort of motion, and we could take those ad hocly. I think we probably want to consolidate it per zone or something, so it's not insane when we send it, because we have to send it off to rules and ordinance, or to the town rules and ordinance, I think, or council, yeah, to make it. I think it goes rules first, then council, but I'll confirm.
I think so.
Yeah. So that I think ultimately is the vehicle. There's a motion that we vote on to do it. I think it would also be probably too much to try to slam it through all at once. I agree with Gina, even though I was loving the idea of being done with it, but it is probably too much. But that's like full disclosure.
So wait, Bob, I'm a little confused. Hold on.
Okay, yep. That's why we're here.
I thought one was more about process and not the actual sending the table recommendations to the town council. That part of it, I think, should be done all at once.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
Then we can do that.
Okay.
That's fine. That makes sense. Yeah, because I don't want to like write a memo and be like, change SP2 to SP3. Thank you. Right? Like it's like what? Like that's not, and they're not going to love that either, to have it so fragmented and confusing. But I do think as a group we can decide, and we don't have to do it all in one night, but we can kind of build on a master list that is fixing these things. And I think a lot of it's right. I think it's just categorizing things differently. I think not a lot of changes are happening in that right column. But I think if we add new things to it, words and uses that weren't specifically called out before, that we as a group decide we need, then we have to go through the effort of filling out those columns to the right of where they're involved. And that's what I was suggesting when Chris asked. That's what I'm suggesting people come, rather than come with a motion fired up with, I might have 5 changes, Chris might have 500. And, having motions like that probably aren't super useful. It's useful to just have one at the end about here's what we are, showing strike throughs, and here's where we want to be, and having a motion that somehow puts that into words. Does that make more sense, Anna? Have I got you back on the wheels here?
Yes.
Okay.
And this is a collaborative process that we would do live after having done our own homework on each column. So I'm trying to.
Yeah, because again, it's an open meeting. It's an open meeting law. So people understand that, we're not supposed to go get coffee and then decide things as a quorum or whatever. We're not supposed to be meeting outside of this. But that doesn't mean you can't do the homework. That doesn't mean you can't think through it so that you come kind of charged up. And it is just, I think it will take forever. Just come in with a blank thing going, what do you guys think?
Right, so you're kind of proposing dividing it up a little bit.
Oh, it's just if I'm dividing it up in the sense that, so at least someone will have some thought on some of the matters when we come back together. I'm going to do my best to go through all of the CB, but I was just saying, somebody take the top of the pile, somebody take the bottom of the pile, so we really have a better chance of having someone thought through and filled out both the uses and whether they fit in the parts. Just a suggestion. You can do them all if you want, and I think that would be great, but I just want to make sure that all of us don't do the first line and everybody runs out of steam by the time it's 6.
Right, and then we need 10 meetings just for that.
Okay. So yeah, so we're yeah, so I'm ready to stop talking. So you guys look like it. So I appreciate you guys hanging in there and the public until 9:15. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about? And let me know if you want anything else on the agenda. That's something that you can just email, again, individually. You can email and ask me any questions individually. You can email and ask each other any questions individually. We're just not supposed to be having meetings individually or as a group without the public, which we're trying to.
I had one thing. I just wanted to make sure. Denise, are you capturing the questions that are being submitted so that we can address them at another meeting?
Yep.
I've written them down just in case, but
Oh yeah,
just
no,
want to make
it's all
sure
in the record.
everybody's captured.
I have them, yep,
Thank you.
no problem.
Yeah, there's some gold in there, and anyway, things that we didn't even bring up yet. But I think, Honor, when you're talking about what the effects, and you look at what the effects could be on a site like that with the existing zoning as is, it's not a given that you have to pick one or the other based on the recommendations. And I would just let you, try it a few different ways. There's SDOD as well. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Good. All right. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All right. See, Steve saves all his words for the important stuff.
Indeed.
All right. Well, thank you all, and thank you for volunteering for pieces and being part of this really important conversation. And again, thanks for the public for being part of it and being engaged. We need you guys too. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
So we'll look forward to Monday, March 8th.
March 8th, yeah, March 8th, and we'll get some
Bye,
stuff on the
everybody.
website. Bye-bye.